Greetings, everyone. Welcome to week 4 of web design. This week, we're going to be concentrating on two main concepts, both of which are very important. The first is authentication. Authentication basically is laying out whether you are who you say you are, to make sure that only authorized, or excuse me, authentic, okay, individuals are getting access to the system. And once you're basically uh, inside and you've been authenticated, then we talk about authority. What are the things you can do since you have now been screened to be okay to enter the application? Okay. So, looking at our overall list of things we're going to be doing, we're going to learn how web apps keep track of who the user is, how they log in, how they protect certain parts of the site from unauthorized access. What we can expect this week, express sessions and cookies. We kind of touched that a little bit in previous, but we're going to go a little more deeper into how that works. Understanding how app remembers users across requests, multiple requests. Excuse me. User authentication, log in, log out, implement basic login concepts for users can sign in and out securely. Passport.js for session-based authentication. Explore how Passport.js simplifies authentication with flexible strategies, authorization, and protected routes. We're going to be looking at that. Expectation, hands-on practice. You'll be creating simple login systems and test session persistence, applying security basics, adding protected routes to your application to see how the role-based access works, who can get to what and why. Thinking like a developer, understanding why authentication and authorization are essential for real-world applications. By the end of week 4, your application should be capable of tracking users, handling logins, protecting sensitive content, and an essential step toward building a secure and professional grade software. Okay, so let's start with session cookies. HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, is stateless. Okay. Doesn't remember anything from one session to the next. So servers forget users, forget that they even came to the site. Sessions allow persistence across requests. And what that means is we got to have some way that we can remember who you are just to keep some consistency. Remember we talked about, synchronous versus asynchronous, and that, synchronous is more user friendly and that interaction back and forth allows us to at least think that they have that when we go through a site, we go to a website and we start interacting with it, that we are basically like talking to a person. That's what we want to kind of eventually get to, is to make sure that we make things as user friendly as possible. Sessions enable us to do that. With sessions also enable authentication and authorization. Both of those are key, and sessions allow for that to happen. What are sessions? The session stores user data between requests. I'm here, I go to a website, I come back, you gave me my response based on the request that I wanted. I go back to the site. I don't want to have to sign in again. I don't want to have to enter my information that I requested again. Okay. I want the site to remember that I was there. Okay, so in that particular case, the server assigns a session ID sent as a cookie. The session ID is just a little piece of data that recognizes who you are, okay, and takes that information and saves other information surrounding that so that it knows, basically, hopefully we can do a continuous contact with each other. Server assigns session ID since a cookie. used for login states, for shopping carts, for preferences. With our session, each request is anonymous, and we really don't want to do that because it's not very user friendly. Cookie basics, cookies, small data pieces stored in the browser, sent automatically with every HTTP request. Identify which session belongs to which user. Here is a snippet, of code where we're setting up a session and we're putting a password with it. So we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. So we're setting a password, we're setting up a session, and then we're determining whether we should save the original user information or not. So that's what we're doing here. Looking at the line by line explanation of what's happening, the app.use session adds the express session middleware to your app. This enables the server to create, manage user sessions. It's used in login state carts. Every request can now have a request session object. That request session object is information about you that we can keep track so that when you come to the website again, we can have some semblance of remembering who you are. Also, password, secret, string used to sign the session ID cookie, prevents tampering with cookies on the client side. In real apps, they are very long. Okay, it won't be secret as my secret as the password. Okay. It will be something very complex that someone can't real quickly determine what it is. Example: using environmental variables. Okay, using as a password things that once you use it, you're not going to really remember how to use it again. Resave. Tells Express not to save a session back to the store if it wasn't modified. This is just an efficiency type method. Okay, and that's just general. Anytime that you don't have to update something, you don't have to keep track of something, it is more efficient. And more efficient means I can get a response back quicker. And if I can get my response back quicker, I'm happier. Okay, so that's just a remainder of uninitialized, whether we're saving the user information or not. Okay, so the snippet enables session handling in Express. It assigns session cookies with a password and only saves the session when it's needed. Okay, authentication. Authentication, verifying identity, usually done through a login form. Okay. On success, server creates a session. The session persists identity across pages. So with authentication, if I sign on and I'm able to authenticate, I get a session created. Once I get that session created, that session exists until I delete it. Here's a login, logout flow. Basic concept. User submits a login form. Server checks the credentials. If valid, a session is created. Session ID is sent back via a cookie. Log out, we destroy the session. So once we're finished, we make sure that the session that we created is gone. Okay, so it can't be reused. This is just a snippet equal to the or similar to the one we just talked about. This is basically has a request and a response where we're looking in the body, okay, the body of the HTML. Okay, so when we're looking at the password piece and we're checking to see if it's equal to the word secret. If it is, we create a session for Alice. If it's not, we create a session for Alice and we give her the dashboard for the application. else we send back an error message saying it's invalid. So that's basically following the flow we're describing up here. And I would apologize. I'm looking at two screens. I need to make sure that my pointer is in the right place. Okay, let's talk about Passport. Passport is a middleware that works perfectly with Node and Express. Passport.js supports strategies, the local, Google, GitHub. So we're going to be talking about what are strategies here in 1 second. But it handles login sessions and user serialization. Talk about that here also. It reduces boilerplate and improves security. Boilerplate is that concept that I have to do something, and the next time I come in, I have to do the same thing, and the next time I come in, I have to do the same thing. Okay, so we want to make it as much as possible save things, do it, save it, so the next time I come in, I don't have to do it again. Okay, that's a boilerplate. Okay, here in the framework of Passport in JS, a strategy, a modular method, or plugin. It's a plugin that defines how users are authenticated. Okay, local strategy. Okay, local strategy, users log in with username or email and password stored in the database. That's the local strategy. Okay, local strategy for Passport. There are other strategies. There's a Google strategy. There's a GitHub strategies. There's a Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You name it. There are different strategies that websites use to determine how they're going to authenticate you. So here's how strategies work. Finds how to verify a user's identity, password check, auth token, returns a user profile object if the authentication succeeds. Allows your app to handle multiple login methods side by side. So my website that I'm building, I can just limit it to the local strategy, or I can expand on it so that there's multiple strategies going on at the same time. So I can use Google and local at the same time. Okay, so it's supporting local strategies, Google, GitHub, and that's just common. Since there's different strategies out there, you don't want your application to be in a situation that you can only run it on certain platforms. You want to be as flexible as possible to make sure that the gambit of different platforms that are out there, Google, GitHub, that we can access and be able to sign in those platforms as well. Okay, we mentioned serialization. Serialization is converting a user object into a small storable form like a user ID to keep the session after login. This is a method that's basically used for efficiency's sake. The user information that's associated with that's passed over could be quite a bit of information. This is using a shortcut. It's sort of a what's the term I'm looking for? Sort of using the stored ID, just maybe the ID itself, from the session and turning it back into a full user for later use. Just an efficiency type thing. When a user logs in successfully, you don't want to store the entire object, okay, in the session. Instead, you serialize just enough information to identify the user, and later, then from each request, I take the user ID or the small piece of code that I'm saving. I take that, I read the database to get the full information about that user. I bring it, I use it as I need to use it. Then I get rid of the full version of the user, and I go back and I keep the ID. So it's just a small piece of information that uses less storage and is trying to identify who you are. So password strategy defines how credentials are checked. Again, this particular snippet is using a local strategy, and the local strategy says I'm going to have a username, okay, and then I'm going to have a password. That's the local strategy for Passport. Again, I'll return the username or I'll say it's false. Either pass the authentication or I fail the authentication. So here, password.use, this is kind of you'll see that sometimes I might put information in there multiple times. This is kind of just to reinforce that this particular piece is important. Here, local strategy, username, password is done, which means that we have it. If the username is equal to admin and the password is equal to secret, okay, I can set up a session for you. If not, well, if it does, it also is going to be returning the username. And if not, yeah, it is going to basically fail and come back with nothing. Okay. It just said you could take that nothing and put out an error message that says, hey, I'm sorry, you're not authorized. Or you can't be authenticated. Okay. You can't be authenticated to get into the system. Okay, authentication. Using Passport. Okay, must initialize and enable the session. Use Passport authentication and routes. Code snippets. Okay, this is where we initialize Passport. This is where we tell Passport that we're going to be using the Passport session to initialize a session for us. Here's some basically snippet code. Okay, that says I'm logging into Passport. I want you to authenticate using the local strategy. If I got in correctly, then give me the application dashboard, okay, which is the application, the things I want to do or I'm authorized for. If not, okay, then I redirect to the login screen. So basically, I'm going to go back and say, hey, you weren't authenticated. Please enter your information again. And so that's what basically we're doing here. Okay, so with the app use on the Passport for initialization, this adds Passport middleware to your app, sets up Passport to handle authentication on incoming requests. Without this line, Passport would never be invoked. App use, and this says go ahead and use the Passport session, enables persistent login session, works together with Express sessions. Okay, after logging in, Passport serializes the user into the session. Remember, a small piece of information is going to identify me. Later requests, it deserializes the user. So we go through that process of getting that little piece of snippet code that we want to identify me. Then once I'm finished, I'm done, okay, that information will be deserialized, which means that basically we're getting ready to delete. Authorization. Authorization determines what an authenticated user can access. Here, for example, we might have a situation where if I'm identified as an admin, I go to the admin route. If I'm a regular user, I go to the profile only route. And within those folders is code that determines what action needs to be done. Okay, implemented with middleware for access control. And if I'm going over something and you don't understand what I said, please note it. And then when in class or when we get together on our board, together on the forum board, we can talk about it. So expectations, you're going to keep track. And I'll tell you one thing that you probably want to do won't totally solve the problem. But again, in this class, I'm allowing you to use ChatGPT. I encourage you to use ChatGPT because in the time frame that we have, we want to try to get to the basics as quickly as possible. So if you have a question, put it in chat. Okay, see what chat says. If after putting it in chat you don't understand what's going on, let's sit down and we'll go through it step by step. But so don't think that it's just I'm giving this to you and you're to automatically remember it and understand it. The sessions we have face to face, sessions we have on the forum board, okay, that is going to support this information. So here again, this is just basically going through line by line, the Passport, how we initialize Passport, how we initialize the Passport session. and then here how we post logins and log offs, okay, with this particular code. So basic practices: always use HTTPS for secure cookies. Okay, sometimes you have an application that says HTTP, no security, HTTPS. We do want it secure. Store hash passwords. That's just a normal best practice that we change the form of the password so just it's not totally visible. Just in plain sight, you have to do some dehashing. Use environmental variables for secrets. I'm sure all of you have gone through and set up a password and it comes back and tells you whether it's good, bad, medium, great. Okay. So basically use passwords that fall into that great category. Unfortunately, oftentimes those type passwords are hard to remember, but again, that's the purpose. They're hard to remember. Okay, so that's kind of our overview on authentication and authorization, and on cookies and keeping letting us get into a application, authenticated, creating a cookie. So now I have a means of somewhat assembling of having a back and forth asynchronous conversation with the website. Synchronous conversation. I'm sorry. That we have a synchronous conversation with the website, which makes the flow goes easier, makes it more user friendly, and makes your website more professional. The more I can have that synchronous type activity, the better off we'll be. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Again, please note them, write them down, text them to me, send them to me. Use chat. You're okay there. And we'll talk to you next time on week 5. Have a good one.